Good evening from our headquarters in Kiev. We are here for the only prime-time show on Eastern Europe and Ukraine and the geopolitical storm taking place here. My name is Natalia Gumenyuk. I'm a journalist of Hromadske.
And my name's Gulliver Cragg. I'm moonlighting for Hromadske from my day job as correspondent for France 24 here in Kiev. Today marks exactly 1 year since Ukrainians woke up to find that President Viktor Yanukovych was no longer around, and in some sense it was the victory of Maidan, but of course the mood of the country is not exactly celebratory at the moment. We're going to be talking about that anniversary. We're also going to be talking about the situation in the east with the ongoing apparent non-application of the Minsk peace agreement. But sadly today we have to start by going to Kharkiv, where there has been an explosion at a march marking the anniversary of Maidan, and 2 people were killed. This is the first time, mistaken, since May 2014 that people have been killed in an attack away from the main conflict zone in the Donbass. And we can cross now by Skype to Kharkiv and to Taras Ganja, who's a Euromaidan activist. First of all, my condolences to you, because I believe that it was a friend of yours was among the 2 people who died. But can you just give us a bit of an account of what happened?
What happened, what I hear from, I would receive this telephone call from a friend of mine who was there, and would just give you away the information that he would give me, because I was not among those people. What he would tell me is that the explosion would come from the left side of the street, and you know, our communal services, they wouldn't, when they take away the snow, they do not entirely remove it. They just put it aside and put it aside of the road. And so by doing this, you're having stockpiles of snow on the side of the road. And this is where the bomb has been hidden. This is what I'm being told. And when the explosion went, the first thing that happened that immediately 2 people were killed. Around 20 were wounded. There was a kind of a panic, but then the people would come back and try to, well, solve the situation. Trying to help those, and we won't believe that someone who we would know got actually killed. This is what I hear on the telephone. I wasn't there. I couldn't be proving it, but what I was being told was this is information from a good friend of mine, very good friend of mine.
So there would be also it was the first time when there were many explosions in Kharkiv, and not just in Kharkiv, but there were no victims. And how, in general, how it feels these days when you talk to the people and your friends. So what is the mood? What we know that this commemoration ceremony, for the anniversary of the Maidan, it went on and people still stayed in the streets. And what is your take on that?
Yes, it's important that the entire action, why would it happen that people would take to the streets to commemorate all those dead in Maidan a year ago? And this was an act of revenge from those out there who probably somehow do not share the same beliefs. What I believe that I tell you what, if I walk down into the mini market to buy me food, and I see a girl bearing her fingernails colored in the color of a national flag. And it is common in Kharkiv. It's a general attitude. I believe this applies to your question.
Okay, thank you, Taras, for talking to us in this difficult and complicated time. And we know so far that was from the Ukrainian official sources that one of the victims were also the policeman, and there is an investigation. That's not that much we know. I also encourage you to follow our Twitter. We asked the question, could a Kharkiv-style attack happen in Kiev? So we encouraging you to answer the question and be engaged with us. So, for instance, there was already an answer. Would a terrorist attack in Kiev make any difference? They have been already happening elsewhere. No international response, but that was a feeling from our audience. As what was another major news this week, we were following if the Minsk agreement, if the Ukrainian-Russian agreement also with the rebels. And the main news was the retreat from Debaltsevo of the Ukrainian troops. It was a huge stronghold of the Ukrainian army right between two self-proclaimed separatist republics. And we would like to give you the feeling of that. And the Hromadske journalists also talked to the people, to the soldiers on the ground, how this retreat took place. Okay, that won't be. No, there would be a longer video, but we already have.
Okay, well, let's move on to talking about whether or not there's any sign of the violence finally stopping. Michael Bochurkiv is our guest. He's the spokesperson for the OSCE mission, which is supposed to be observing the application of the agreements. Now, this morning, there was an announcement from both sides that they were ready and had a detailed plan for the withdrawal of heavy artillery from the front line. Is there any sign of that actually happening?
Good to be back here, and congratulations on the renovation. It's very impressive what you have here now. First of all, if I can, of course, our condolences go out to the victims, families, and friends of the victims in Kharkiv. I can tell you that our monitors were close by. In fact, they were so close they felt the blast wave from that explosion. Later on today, we'll be issuing a spot report, and that will go public. We feel it's very important to get what we saw, exactly what happened there. In terms of events on the ground elsewhere in the east, it's been a very busy, long week. And of course, by this time, we would have expected to see already at least the beginning of the withdrawal of heavy weaponry. Now, our chief monitor, Ambassador Apakan, has requested in writing information from all sides on which process they plan to follow on withdrawal of heavy weaponry. It's not that simple, because what we need, we're going to be verifying. We've been tasked to verify this withdrawal. But what we require, the special monitoring mission, is a baseline. So we need to know, for example, what actually exists. What is your inventory of heavy weaponry? How many 100mm howitzers you have, or multiple launch rocket systems? Secondly, we need to be informed of the routes that are going to be used, the roads that are going to be used for the withdrawal. And then thirdly, we need to know where they're going to actually be stored.
And so far, you haven't got that information?
No, we haven't. And yesterday, our Deputy Chief Monitor, Alexander Hug, read a statement at a press conference reminding all sides that this is the bottom line. This needs to be adhered to. You know, one of the things we've been saying all week is the Minsk agreements are not a shopping list. You can't pick and choose certain provisions of what you want to follow and what you don't want to follow. It has to be adhered to comprehensively. And I think yesterday and throughout today, we've been trying to make that message very clear to all sides.
But so when the Russian-backed separatist leader, and also I think the Ukrainians, it's the same, announced they have a detailed plan and that they're going to commence the withdrawal of heavy artillery this afternoon. If, in fact, at the time when they make that announcement, they still haven't provided you with the information that you need in order to observe that, is it fair to say that they're really in bad faith, pretending that they're ready when they're not?
I don't want to speculate on when they do it. I mean, we're of course hopeful and confident they will provide this information, so we don't want to second guess them. We're hoping that, you know, we're now 1 week into the ceasefire, that this is the time for visible steps, not just words, to happen. The other thing I can tell you is that we take our tasking very seriously in terms of a believable, independent body that can verify the information. But for us to do that job, we need certain things in place in writing. And if I can add one more thing, another very important aspect for us is unfettered access and safe access. On both sides, our monitors have experienced significant delays at certain checkpoints, or not being allowed to proceed beyond a further point.
How often does it happen, and in what circumstances? Maybe you would give us examples.
Well, if you read our daily report, I think almost on a daily basis you will see some indication. There may have been 1 or 2 days where that didn't happen, but a real trouble spot for us is just north of Hromadske, you know, which is the port town between Mariupol and the Russian Federation border. And the reason we're trying to gain access there is there's been very heavy shelling throughout the week. In fact, it remains one of the worst hotspots throughout the whole conflict zone this past week. The rebel-controlled checkpoint there will not allow us beyond a certain point. And then also, we have not been able to get to Novozovsk as well for weeks and weeks and weeks. So these are problem areas for us.
Natalka, do we have this quote?
Yeah, I'm asking to bring my colleagues a quote, because there was recently, this week, there was an article written by the Russian journalist, Moscow-based correspondent from Kommersant, Ilya Barabanov, who for a while is reporting from the area. And basically his quote says that he talked to the Russian soldiers there and said that the logic behind the military operation in the last few months is very simple. Combat missions for the self-declared republics are carried out by those who have real fighting ability. They complete the given task, and then they leave, and then they leave the territory, and then local separatists take their place at the command offices and block posts and meet the journalists ready to tell them about their past as their miners and they are locals. So have you observed these situations? Did you have a chance to really see that there was the
Russian troops do the dirty work and then leave the local people in place? Is that a pattern you've seen?
Well, I'll tell you what we did see this week, which was very disturbing. First of all, going back to the access issue, and by the way, I have to myself, the checkpoint near Hromadske is government-controlled, and I think we didn't go any further because of safety reasons. But to get to Novozovsk, we have been prevented for weeks and weeks by the rebel groups. Now, let me talk about what was left behind in Debaltseve. We were not provided for most of the week, despite heavy pressure from the Deputy Chief Monitor, written guarantees of safety to get to Debaltseve. Finally, yesterday, we were able to actually get there. We helped escort a convoy of 5 vehicles, 5 trucks from the RCRC. They had tons of food and non-food items with them. But what we saw was, the best word we could find was a catastrophe, because not one of the buildings that our monitors saw was not damaged. Widespread damage. The people are very frightened with very little resources. There's a huge need for humanitarian aid to come in there. But while we were there, there was still incoming and outgoing shelling, so it's a very difficult situation.
But in this particular time, this week, the Debaltseve was overtaken. There was like the change of powers. And did OSCE has a chance to be there at that moment and really to see, or because there were news that at some time there was no access. So since when did you have access?
We were, our Deputy Chief Monitor and a team from our Kiev headquarters traveled to Solidar to meet with the JCCC, the Joint Coordination there. And we did request in writing safety guarantees from the rebel groups to go to Debaltseve. They did not provide it. And not providing safety guarantees is the same as blocking us. However, yesterday, finally, we did get those guarantees in place. We went there with the ICRC, and we were able to, again, facilitate their access and have a look on the ground for the first time. And as I said, it was a real catastrophe there in terms of the damage. But earlier in the week, we did want to get there to see what was going on, but we were prevented from going there.
And last time you were here, we were speaking about the expanding the mission.
Yes.
So how, so far, can the OSCE mission be everywhere, and especially reaching the Russian-Ukrainian border with that capacity you have, with that amount of people?
Yeah, well, don't forget is once the kind of withdrawal happens, and if they go up to 150 kilometers or whatever, you could have a zone which is bigger than the size of or twice the size of Vermont. So it is a large area. What we have done so far is, with the backing of our 57 participating states, is we've redeployed a lot of our monitors to the east. So now we have almost 350 in eastern Ukraine. The other thing, we have 2 of 4 remaining drones operational. They've been moved closer to some of the hot spots so we can do observation from the air. And then we've also asked participating states for assistance with high technology, high imagery, satellite photos, radars, things like that, because it is a large area. And again, I've talked to you about the access problems, but we feel we're up to the job. 50% of our monitors are military or former military. Many have served in former missions. Many have observed ceasefires before. And, we had a special meeting of the OSCE Permanent Council earlier this week, and it was clear that there is very, very strong support from all members for the mission.
This night, Hromadske journalists also were witness of another major prisoners exchange, and there were 139 Ukrainian soldiers back, those who were caught in the Baltimore mainly, and there was no OSCE mission. How it happened? How it generally goes that there was this exchange and there was no observers?
I haven't got the report yet from that, but usually we are present. We are present at those exchanges, and of course, the reason for us to be there is to verify the numbers. So I can't tell you yet, but we will be reporting on that in our daily report tomorrow.
Okay, I think that's all that we've got time for. Thank you very much for joining us, Michael Bojurka from the OSCE. Michael was talking about the village of Shirokine, which is just to the east of Mariupol and has been the scene of some of the most intense fighting. I think we've now got a report of some of the Ukrainian soldiers who were
encircled there, and it was exactly at the moment they were taken away.
So this video really shows what the scene is around there.
And that this territory is taken away again as well. So what's happening near Mariupol as well, we're following.
Как получилось это?
Как получилось? Да вот так вот. Пока держали оборону, отвлекали. Те пошли с захода с тыла, нагнали тяжелой техники. Держались как могли, пока нас не зажали в кольцо. Поддержки нам не дали. Как обычно это было и в прошлый раз в Иловайске.
А сколько сейчас вас вышло в итоге?
Сейчас 14 человек нас вышло.
Из 28?
Ну да. Ну раненых мы отправили, там с ранеными пошло 4 человека с ранеными. Нам сказали держаться, поддержка едет. Национальная гвардия нам поддержку не дает. Говорят, держитесь, а выйдете, мы вас посадим. Вот и все.
Выйдете, мы вас посадим.
Ну а то, что вы сейчас вышли, это как будет расцениваться?
Не знаю, я застрелюсь лучше.
I think that video, and there are plenty more like it, shows that so far since the Minsk agreement, there hasn't really been a ceasefire. Is that going to change the attitude that Ukraine's European partners have? That's one thing I'd like to be asking our next guest, Rebecca Harms, head of the Greens in the European Parliament and frequent visitor to Ukraine. I believe you've just got back from the East. But first of all, can I ask, in European circles, is the way things have developed since Minsk II was signed changing possibly attitudes and what the policy towards Ukraine might be?
So I think what has to be recognized now among European leaders is that it's a good idea to work for a ceasefire and a peace process, but it's in fact very, very difficult to get it. So the agreement and the reality, there are, I would say, light years in between.
And do European leaders realize this? Do they apply the necessary pinch of salt or dose of skepticism to what the separatist representatives and Russian representatives say, or do you think there's still a degree of naivety?
So I would say the experience of Debaltsevo was an experience which might change into a better understanding of reality in east of Ukraine and the problems of this war. And also that Mr. Poroshenko last week started to ask for a blue helmet mission in the region, because this shows also that in Ukraine there are people who recognize that if there is an agreement on a demarcation line, you need also somebody who is able to guarantee that this demarcation line is kept.
How serious is that? Because when I talk to some of the also European politicians, that it takes very long and it might last, the whole, the reaction with the mission. So what are plans discussed? Do you know anything?
So I go back tomorrow to Brussels and I will really push this answer to the question, what shall we do, what can we do in the European Union among the leaders in the West? That Minsk agreement is not only something on paper, but can deliver. And so far, I have not heard a better proposition than the proposition to have a United Nations robust blue helmet mission. Because I have not been for the first time now in Slavyansk and Artyomovsk. I'm pretty much aware of the tensions in this region on two sides, and those who want a ceasefire, they have really to engage in achieving a ceasefire.
Rebecca, you're also very much into the human rights issues. So from your trips to Slavyansk, to Artyomovsk, we just showed some photos from your Twitter, and to Kharkiv, talking the human rights activists there, what is your major take? What else should be done besides what we talk about, the war and the fighting?
So there's... on first hand, there is a huge problem in Ukraine with those so-called internally displaced people. So those people who had to leave their homes in Donbas places. And there are many, and they are mainly in the cities of the east. And those cities, like Slavyansk or also Kharkiv, they are coming to the limits of what is feasible, and they need support. But on the other hand, some of the pictures we see from Debaltsevo or also smaller cities, places in Donbas or Lugansk, people have been already poor before the war, and now they are really suffering, especially old people. And I heard from my friend Mr. Zakharov in Kharkiv that all international institutions, the European Union, Kiev government, has to think about how to help those people really suffering in this war.
And if there was help coming from European institutions and other international institutions, that might also help change people's attitudes towards Ukraine's Western-leaning government in those areas.
So I was always against politicization of humanitarian aid, because humanitarian aid normally should be neutral in such a conflict. But meanwhile, I think the European Union should be much more visible in humanitarian aid than so far.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for joining us, Rebecca Harms.
Let's see what will be done in Brussels, or not just in Berlin, wherever.
So miracles never happen, but so many leaders of the European countries have been present today here in Kiev for the March of Dignity, and I think those who came here have now even more the duty, to deliver.
Okay. Thank you again.
Thank you very much for joining us. It's a year since Viktor Yanukovych fled Ukraine and the new government came to power. On that day, Ukrainians discovered that Yanukovych's opulent palace outside of Kiev, Mezhygiria, which he had appropriated for himself, with a dubious legal foundation, was open, and crowds flooded in to see how the president had been living. Not only members of the public, but also investigative journalists who discovered a large quantity of documents which Yanukovych and his colleagues had tried to destroy by throwing them into the lake near the palace. I remember being there shortly after that and seeing the journalists piecing together and trying to dry the documents that were found. I know that this became the project called YanukovychLeaks. Katya Gorczynska was one of the journalists involved in that. And what I want to know now is what became of those documents? What did they prove in the end? What are the worst things that you were able to prove thanks to that discovery?
Good evening. Thank you. Actually, there were a lot of things that surfaced from those documents, and a lot of things that Ukrainians already knew. We already knew that we are ruled by a corrupt, greedy, and terrible person, and the documents provided ample proof of that. You know, and also there are a lot of details that came out of that. We didn't know about much of the property that Yanukovych, his family, and his proxies owned. You know, for example, we didn't know that he had a plan to build a spa. We didn't know that he had a plan to build a hotel. We had no idea he was building or his son rather, was building an office center that was obscuring a view for a school and basically taking over a part of the territory of a school. We didn't know that he was a vindictive and suspicious personality, and you know, while Maidan was happening, he actually had the State Security Service trail his girlfriend as she went to restaurants and entertained herself. We didn't know about many of his friends' connections, hobbies, such as hunting. We had no idea about his wonderful collections of antique things and presents that he was given. So basically, it was a lot of things that surfaced in all kinds of directions, and it was really, really difficult to make sense out of those documents because we're talking about 25,000 different documents that were, you know, in various, you know, some of them were in bad shape and others were better, but still it's 25,000.
And have they been now put together in such a way that they could make a case against Viktor Yanukovych and his allies? I mean, Petro Poroshenko reacted to Viktor Yanukovych's recent TV interview by saying, well, that would be great if he comes back to Ukraine because we'll be able to put him straight in jail. Is that the case, that the documents provide enough proof?
Yeah, what is the official response? We've seen that everybody can go, for instance, to this webpage, YanukovychLeaks, and, you know, get a lot of information, but
well, it's a lot more than that, because basically all the documents are online. What we did at the initial stage, not only did we fish them out of the lake and dried them, we also initially photographed them and then scanned them in high resolution, and all of them are available online. So basically anyone who is interested in Yanukovych's affairs can go in and check them out. But also at the end, we passed all these folders and all these documents and to the General Prosecutor's Office for storage. And we actually don't have any idea what happened to that, because there are two investigative teams of journalists who have now applied with a specific type of request, information request, to the General Prosecutor's Office to actually figure out what happened to those documents, whether they are being investigated, whether anything is.
Is there any response?
Not that I know of, no.
And we're also curious, what happened to all these people? I mean, many of them had left to Russia. I mean, Yanukovych himself, his son, a lot of his proxies, and also people from the former government. Are you following what's happening to their business so far?
Well, actually, amazingly, not all of them left. And, one of the main proxies for Yanukovych and his sort of top company that was dealing with everything around his mansion and his residence in Mezhyhirya, the company called Tatters, was formerly owned by a guy called Serhiy Kliuev, who's a brother of the former chief of staff for the president, and he's also a parliament member now, current parliament member. He didn't run away. He stayed behind. And now, recently, just this week actually, the Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty investigative team checked property records and realized that the company is no longer owned by this guy, but by another proxy. So they don't really, some of them are not afraid, some of them are here. It's not really particularly difficult to, to even call them into the prosecutor's for questioning. I'm just not sure if that happened, and how effective that was.
Before we go on with that, we would like to show a short video also with Hromadske talked to the people, because also there was a new prosecutor Ukraine, and also one of the top leaders of the high-profile leaders of the party of region of the party of Yanukovych, Yefremov, who was in jail. He's in court, and we talked to the people, asked them, do they believe that he would be prosecuted ever?
This is another one of the cronies, if you like, of Viktor Yanukovych, who didn't leave the country. Yefremov, currently under arrest, but I think he's out on bail, right?
So we can just have a short video then.
Там достаточно много, список большой, которые ждут очереди. Но опасаюсь, как бы не было всяких там застав и так далее и тому подобное. Я бы не хотел, чтобы это было как бы на публіку.
Я вважаю, ні. Ну, я не вірю в наше правосуддя. Вірю, що Порошенко наладить щось в країні, а те, що люди, які повинні бути покарані, будуть покарані, то не дуже вірю. Вони відкупляються.
Я думаю, справу затягнуть просто на декілька років, поки її не забудуть. В цій державі завжди так.
На мою думку, це трошечки показова справа.
Не доведуть, бо він окажеться зовсім невиновним.
Думаю, що не буде, тому що в нас взагалі оцей уряд, який зараз при владі, не зламав, не поламав жодної схеми за весь час, нічого. І абсолютно майже рік не було зроблено. Тому це більш схоже на якийсь піар.
Дуже хотілося б. Дуже.
The people interviewed there don't seem to have very much confidence about people associated with Yanukovych's crimes and the crimes of the Party of Regions government in general ever really being brought to justice. Is that pessimism shared by people who are a bit closer to the evidence and following a bit closer what's going on?
It's not really about how close to the evidence you are. It's about any signs that you see, whether the cases are actually being investigated. And we are now facing a time when in March, when the European Union and some countries in the European Union will be lifting sanctions against the close circle of Yanukovych, simply because they don't have a case. They simply were not provided with ammo from the Ukrainian law enforcement to be able to back up their cases of corruption, accusations of corruption.
At the same time, it was really a year after the prosecutor had been changed, and there were a few high-profile politicians were more or less detained. Do you think there's any progress with the new prosecutor? Is there any evidence that it's really like the court are happening not just because of the anniversary of the Maidan?
Well, actually, we've already been through this, right? In 2005, we had a similar case when a high-profile Party of Regions politicians was arrested, and even, accusations, fairly serious ones, rolled out against him. But then they were dropped, just, half a year later or something like that. And now I was really surprised with the charges that Yefremov got, because basically, if you look at the criminal code and you look at the article which was used to convict Tymoshenko and then you look at the articles that they're using to accuse Yefremov, they're either side of Tymoshenko's article, which I found quite ironic, because these are basically articles that are to do with abuse of power or forgery of documents. It's almost like when you don't have a case, you use these articles. Initially, Yefremov was investigated for financing separatism, and that's a much more serious accusation. But for some reason, he wasn't charged with that, and we're yet to see why. So I am fairly skeptical about the prospects of this investigation, but I hope that I'll be proven wrong.
Okay, thanks a lot, Katya, for sharing your experience with us and giving a bit more understanding about what's happening with former high-level politicians and also who were involved in the former government. And so far, we're also waiting here to listen about more investigation, because we are waiting to talk to the lawyer who is working with the families of the victims of the people who died at Maidan. But before, we will remind you how it happened, how the massacre at the Maidan had happened. So a very moving and very difficult video to watch for all of us here, but there are plenty more of them. And in this part of the program, we will talk not just about how it was the last year ago. There were commemoration days in Ukraine, and we are going to bring a lot of people who've been at that days within this part of program, both the Maidan medics and those who went to the front line later. As I also should say that while the people to come, for a lot of people, it's still very, very hard to reflect, very hard to discuss, and they said, like, not this year. But we are very grateful to see here Markian Halabala, who is the lawyer for 3 of the Heavenly 100. It is Alexander Harpachenko, Volodymyr Chaplinsky, and Roman Tochin. Those are the 3 guys who also, 3 persons who had died at the Maidan massacre, and you represented them in the court and during the investigation. And we would like to know more about, because there is a general idea that there are people, there is no punishment, there are some kind of, nothing had happened. What's in fact happening?
In fact, the investigation is in process, yes, so a lot of work has been done. A lot of evidence has been gathered. Unfortunately, yes, it's a complicated process to find very close evidence that prove the guilt, for example, of high-level public officers like Yanukovych and so on, because there are no written evidence. Everything was done in an oral form. There are no evidence that the guns have been given to the Berkut police unit and so on. But investigation is in the process, and they got some successes in that direction. But unfortunately, just two policemen are under the court, as far as you know, and they are just the low-level executors of this crime, unfortunately.
And is it normal that it should take so long? I have the impression that there's a very widespread view in Ukraine that if it has taken so long, it must be because people in high places are trying to block the investigation. Is that judgment actually unfair?
Yes, it has been, a year has been gone, yes, and we are disappointed of that fact. But there is a huge scope of this investigation work, as far as I understand. You know, there were no precedents like where in Ukraine has been killed 50 people during 4 hours, yes, and to find somebody guilty, you got to make a lot of work. For example, our team of attorneys at law that represent the victims, just in the beginning of the current year, we had the meeting with General Prosecutor, with the Security Service head Valentina Levachenko, and we just after that meeting, the special unit in the General Prosecutor Office was created that is responsible.
When was it?
It was in the January of this year.
2015?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
almost 11 or
absolutely.
10 months
Just
later.
in that year was created special unit in the General Prosecutor Office that is responsible for these Maidan crimes.
Why was it not created sooner?
Well, it's hard to say, because there was after the Euromaidan has been finished, the new prosecutors came, Makhnytsky, he was in this office for 3 months. Then Vitaly Yarema. Well, it's hard to explain, really, but one of the reasons is that they didn't want to do that.
On this, sometime after, there are always many conspiracy theories and all the things. When you would, with that data you have, what would be the closest facts to say who was shooting at the Maidan, how it all happened? We've seen all that video. It's still there, but the question's still there.
The majority of sources are talking that there has been that the crimes has been committed by 2 groups of people. The majority of victims has been killed by the policeman's special unit Berkut, more than 35 people. The last of them has been killed maybe by snipers, by special units of Omega, Alpha, and so on.
And do you have information about who killed the police officers who died on that day?
One of the versions is that the protesters, yes, and it's one of the versions, but it's still also this process of procedure that investigate the killing of the policemen. The policemen is going on also.
How can you be ensured that the people who investigate are not the ones connected to the former police and the former security service?
I cannot be sure, but I am. But one of the reasons why I'm not scared of this question is that, for example, the head of this special unit in General Prosecutor Office that is responsible for investigation of those very cases is Serhiy Gorbatyuk, and he is one of the most honest people in that office. He is really responsible and a high professional person. So I hope that he will succeed.
Do you have the impression when you're dealing with people in the government and in the prosecutor's office that some of them don't want this investigation to succeed?
I feel it more when I communicate with people from police, because some kind of investigation actions shall be done by those people who work in internal ministry, and I got a feeling, and the rest of the attorneys at law that I cooperate also got this feeling that they do not wish to investigate this case because they are still in this system, especially the mid-level of officers in the Ministry of Internal Affairs in Police.
Mark-Jan, thank you so much for giving more details, so there should be less speculation on that if you ask the professionals. And there is another video we would like to show while reporting this week from Donbass and from Debaltseve. Hromadske team also met the former Berkut policemen who were fighting and serving there together with some of the people from the Maidan who joined the volunteer in different kind of battalions, and you'll also want you to have a look on that.
Ні, не в формі.
А слухайте, але за цим блокпостом вже українських позицій немає.
Нема. Це крайній блокпост до Дебальцева, який працює. Тут був чисто зведений загін з Рівного, в тому числі Беркут. Ну, не в тому числі, а насамперед Рівненський Беркут. Ну, коли ситуація накалилась, то чуть-чуть підійшли там, нам в допомогу. Ну, так і стоїмо, ждемо, що далі буде. Як з Майдана попали сюди?
Ні.
Стріляють.
Зранку, з якої години?
І вночі стріляють.
Скільки ви в АТО вже?
Ми ротація, з самого початку. Беркут саме перший приїхав сюди з самого початку.
Існує такий стереотип, що міліціонери, тим більше Беркут, не воюють в АТО, відсиджуються десь там на дальніх блокпостах.
Ну ви ж бачите, де ми знаходимося, і ви ж далі не можете поїхати, тому що це вже декілька кілометрів від Дебальцева. Ви як бачите, ми міліція, і ми, зокрема, Беркут є тут колишній, воюємо тут. На дорозі, і ніхто нікуди не ховається.
Перетинались тут, не знаю, з добровольцями, з колишніх майданівців.
Ну, звичайно, перетинались, ми ж воюємо разом.
Як у вас відносини з ними?
Та нормальні відносини. Це передача за пацанами, так. Дружні, вони нам допомагали, ми їм допомагаємо. Це війна, ми всі разом воюємо за Україну.
Дякую. Як вас представити в сюжеті?
Мене Веня.
In that video from Debaltseve, we saw a former Berkut officer talking about how now people who were in the Berkut police working for Viktor Yanukovych against the Maidan activists and Maidan volunteers are now fighting in the east alongside volunteers from Maidan for United Ukraine. Well, we're joined now by two volunteer medics from Maidan, Veronika Seleha and Alexander Chernyshin. I'd like to ask you, is it strange to you that now there are people from the Berkut who are on the same side as people who were Maidan volunteers?
No. Actually, during the Maidan time, I was in the Red Cross First Response Team, Red Cross Ukraine, and actually, because we were maybe in some kind of different position, we helped to the both sides, to the police and to the people on the Maidan. So I'm not surprised, actually.
And did you feel during the time of Maidan that the Berkut were an enemy that you could never be working together with, or was it not like that?
Well, for me, the situation that we now have, it's awful from our point of view. Now it's even very difficult to imagine how it's now going on. That is why, that's like a clear, with time it started to be clear situation with Berkut.
Okay, and I would like to, there are many people also writing to see that, Veronika, that was your photo made in 20s of one of you, made of a year ago exactly. I also asked to show the photo of while Alexander was working in these days, and we are curious also, what are you doing now? What after that year we thought that would be the end, it's not. So what are you engaged into?
I'm still in the Red Cross First Response Team, and from time to time I'm traveling east with the different humanitarian missions with the Red Cross Ukraine, and from time to time we gather here for the when the big events is going on in Kiev, like a couple of days ago. There's lots of people, and there may be a situation who need help, so we're still patrolling that kind of events. Yes, I'm going to continue to be involved in that.
I must say that I'm not a doctor, and I even didn't have any special knowledges in medicine, so I was just a volunteer. And after the night of 20s and after the night of 19s, I have understood what profession is the best in this world. I have felt it with other doctors who were there. And now my activity is in public activity, in the activities that I can do. In public activity and in charity. And I have cardinally other feeling to the doctors who were there and to the doctors in the whole world. I have understood that I chose not the right profession. Because it was a feeling that in the moment I can do nothing, because I really can't help some people. I can't help them with the knowledge of medicine. It was my deep change.
We want to remind, and if you're okay to speak about that, how was it? What were you doing exactly on the 20th these days? Because there were many people in the Maidan for a few months, but not everybody was there exactly at that day when the killing had taken place.
Well, on the 20th, actually, I was on the Hromadske street, and I was there. There was no killing at that moment. Then I arrived there. But most of the hardest times for me was on the 18th in the Mariinsky Square and area. At that point, there were lots of injured people, lots of beaten, hardly beaten people, and not killed, but injuries were very, very bad, I would say.
After the night of 19th, I have understood, like many people of my colleagues and friends, that it's a point when you choose and when you make a decision, or you act, or you just watch what is going on there. And as I have told, I do not have the special knowledge, like all my friends that were there. We just wanted to help, and it was a moment when we came into the Hotel Ukraine. We worked with Olga Bogomolets, and we asked how we can help. And we did some work that was useful.
So you were able to help
yes.
the people who were coming in?
We were able, we did it 2 nights, and we felt that why didn't we come before?
And so you only did it for those two nights? Well, you weren't working as a volunteer previously?
Oh, before, of course, there were some active things I'm a journalist, so I could help in another way, but like with doctors, yes, 2 nights.
Yeah, because before there were not that many necessity to help the wounded.
Of course, yes.
And these days we have more than 5,000 people who are killed, and this is a situation when the Ukrainians are getting used to the death, to the casualties. What is your feeling? What can you do in this situation? And is it because in the Maidan everybody went on and helped. Now it's more or less, when you stay in Kiev, looks a bit like something distant, and you think that there are professionals there, or how? What do you think?
You mean that where?
Yeah, I mean, talking about the East, yeah.
Well, there are still lots of volunteers going to the East, and the volunteers who are... I'm actually not a medic, too. I don't have a medical degree or something like that. And I act not as a doctor. I act as the kind of a paramedic. That thing doesn't exist in Ukraine, but still. So I did only first aid, first pre-medical aid. And I know my colleagues, my friends, they are going to the East, trying to help there with different medical or near-medical activities and something like that. So there's still, the movement is going on.
And yeah, after Maidan, with this commemoration, what are still your priorities? You know, what do you think the most important things should be changed? Because we understand there is some disappointment, or sometimes for some people it's not disappointments, but people understand that it's a long and a very hard road. So what would be, for you, the major things to be done?
The most important thing that has changed is, of course, the mind. When people think what they can personally do in order to change something. It means that I do not wait from the government something special. I do not wait for some reform. So I know that maybe if in a year nothing will be changed, I will be not surprised. Because now it's time when the mind has changed, when we think what I personally can do for my city. Me and some other organizers, volunteers, what we personally can, how we can act in our profession, every day. And I think that's the main goal that we have achieved, because there are too many activities, even in Kiev, in other cities, and people act and they want to change. That's the main.
Isn't there a danger that people will get disillusioned if more than a year passes since Maidan and they don't see major changes in the country? Do you think that Ukrainians really can maintain the energy that we saw?
I hope so. I hope so very much. And I think it's very stupid to hope for changes even in 1 year. And like everybody was waiting for Winston Churchill for Ukraine. Yeah. But Winston Churchill said, "Well, I can promise you is tears, sweat, and blood. And months of the struggle and months of the fights. So we're still on the way. And I think the major thing that have to happen is the change. I agree completely with Veronica. It's change of the mindset of the people, and then we have the critical mass of these people with the changed mindset, with the strive for better, and not only strive but willingness to act, to do something. Then everything should be great for Ukraine.
During the years of independence, we have felt it better not to wait, and in this short year, for sure, better to act ourselves. That's all.
But what action now can be done from people in Kiev while the war is going on? Do you still think that civil society can change things?
There's plenty. There's a huge amount of things that can be done. It's kind of everywhere. The people need help, need, I don't know, knowledge, need money, need everything. We have a lot of people displaced here in Kiev and other cities. They have army which requires our help. It's kind of, you have so much opportunities to act. You just have to feel willingness to act. That's it.
Can I ask one more question? When you discovered that people in the east of Ukraine, or a significant proportion of people in the east of Ukraine, didn't understand Maidan and didn't appreciate this big civilian movement, and they seem to believe, some of them really seem to believe that this was something planned by the CIA or that people were paid to be there. Were you surprised to find that so many people just didn't believe that you were really doing this for Ukraine?
Yeah, actually, I was, last time I was in Donetsk, it was 9th of May, and it was one of the big surprise, I would say, for me, to see lots of the people on the main square of Donetsk who actually were hating Ukraine, like hate to live in Ukraine, hate to be in Ukraine. And my thought was, okay, so those people, they are not coming from somewhere else. We live there at least for 23 years in Ukraine. So how come they, in a couple of days or months, they start to hate Ukraine and everything connected with Ukraine? It was kind of, I don't understand that, and I couldn't believe that.
So I just remember you were detained there shortly in Donetsk.
Yes.
Why and how was it?
How was it?
While, in what circumstances?
We were there with the 4 of us from Kiev office, from Kiev team, were in Donetsk. We were transferring our knowledge, transferring our skills to the local Red Cross team, first response team, and we were helping them that day. And after that, we were detained because DNR people thought we are spies and we are, I don't know, investigating something and doing something wrong.
Good, you were lucky to get out. And back then, thanks a lot for Veronica and Alexander, the brave medics of the Maidan who were there in the hardest and the most dangerous and difficult days. And before we having one, also another Maidan protester who then went to fight and just today, a couple of hours ago, has come back from the Luhansk Oblast. We'll see how the square, how the people here were preparing for the commemoration and how it all went. Thank you.
Ну ви постановник?
Я постановник. Разом з родинами героїв і оргкомітетом, по секрету скажу, не з державними структурами. Виконати реквієм.
Дякую.
And now we have with us Miroslav Hai, who is now a volunteer, helping a lot to the Ukrainian army, and who used to be a protester in the Maidan, and then later joined the National Guard. And what I understand that you're waiting to be mobilized again. And now coming from where? Just really from the front line. You've been also to Debaltseve this week.
Yes, I was near, because in this week Debaltseve was closed. It was hard to get this place, and it was dangerous. That's why we, with my group, was near and wait Ukrainian soldiers with food and some clothes for them.
And what areas also you were? How was the ceasefire these days? You're just coming back to Kiev a couple of hours ago. You're here for a couple of...
I came to Kiev, I think 1 hour ago, for this broadcast.
So where were you? What was the last point and how it was there?
My last point, we was in Stanitsa Luganska. It's near Lugansk, another district, war district, and they are very quiet now, very good, no fire. We leave our special presence for soldiers, and after we back to Artyomovsk, and today I sleep in Kharkov, because in hospital there are my friend who was, it's like special troops, who was in Maidan in another site. Nikolai, his name Nikolai, Kolya. 11 December, I hope maybe, if English not perfect, that's why if I'm wrong, please correct me. 11 December, my friend, he's in police, in special troops. He was in another site, and they stormed us.
So they were attacking you a year ago, yes. But now they're in the hospital and you visited him.
Yes, because in my when I was in National Guard, I met him in Slaviansk. I think everybody knows this Ukrainian city.
It's the city that was first taken over by the armed separatists in April 2014, but that the Ukrainians took back in the summer.
Yes, thank you. It was first real fight with many dead men, and in my first fight I was near Kolya, Nikolai. We was in one situation. I don't know that he was in Maidan a year ago. He don't know me that I was in Maidan and who tried beat him a little bit. And but we have very hard way together in this situation in Slaviansk and speak too much. I don't know how this when somebody try kill you with mine, you know, минометный обстрел.
Oh, with mortar fire.
With mortar fire. Yes, we was near with him and speak too much. And now we are, I think, the best friends. He's very nice and very nice, very soft person.
Miroslav.
And I tell you about my last point. Today I was in Kharkov because Kolya now in hospital. He.
At this moment, that is very, very interesting for me. We remember the Maidan a year ago, and you kind of saw another side, and the security forces, they represented this other side. And do you think so? And I was like, there was a lot of outrage from the Maidan activists towards them. Do you think there were some mistakes of understanding? Or do you think there were some you were wrong about something about
in Maidan?
At the Maidan, about viewing the security forces or the Berkut differently while now fighting together?
I explain you. For me, I sure that everything what we do in Maidan was right. Me too. Because in that time it was hard. Now I try to remember this because now life more dynamic. Now war. And Maidan for me it's like children's games because it's like was in another life. But I understand that we do everything right because in my situation, I had only two ways in the time, or I go to another country, or I live and fight, or I'm slave, for example. And it was hard because my wife, my children, my son, all my life tell me that I must run away. It's not problem find a new good place, but I decided that we must stay. Okay, and we win. It was hard. It was surprised because really I don't understand how we win. In last day of Maidan, in the tragic his part when people die, really in Maidan not was too much people, and police really can beat us very easily and I don't know, catch us and take away, arrest.
Does your friend who was on the other side have any explanation of why?
He can understand it.
He also can't understand it.
Yes, they don't understand what's happened. But for me, I understand him because I was in. I understand Maidan's point of view because I was there, like samoobrona, like
self-defense.
Self-defense, yes, like volunteer first, and I was in National Guard. And understand there what it means order, because
when somebody gives you an order,
yes, because in Slaviansk we was in very same situation because people in another side block us, build the barricades little, and but another and I understand. And I was a soldier, I was a guard. National Guard, and I speak with them, and I must. I have a order again, make a block post, stay there, speak with people, try them little
push
bit,
them away,
away, because in Slaviansk in that moment was a big fight, operation, special operation, but it's different because in Maidans not was weapons.
There were no weapons. Yeah.
Yes, and Maidans never call another country to bring soldiers, and Maidans never ask Russia, for example, with their tanks come to our land, you know, and Maidans never shoot. And never destroyed aircrafts, never kill people, never kill police.
This
different. Sorry, maybe
I just want to ask what you can tell us about the latest news from the front. It's now a week since the ceasefire was supposed to have started. How much has the level of violence really reduced, apart from this battle for Debaltseve? Can you say things have changed in the Donbass or not?
You mean how many people?
No, how
since
is
the
in general?
ceasefire.
Because it's already ceasefire, it's calmer than a week ago. And what is going on besides Debaltseve? There is a fight, there was a fight,
no.
so how it's now?
Now, 2 days ago was big fights, really big fights. It was terrible because now the Debaltseve, Uglegorsk, and several villages near they're not in the maps. No city there, no buildings, nothing. But now I speak all the time with not only with soldiers. We try help and speak with people who live there. And I know that Russian troops now go back and live their Opolchenia.
The rebels, insurgency.
Yes. And now all problems near Mariupol. They concentrate, they take these techniques, tanks and rockets, and bring it to Mariupol, near Mariupol. And all time, some people call to us soldiers, tell that that fire there now. In Debaltseve, everything normal.
Good comment. And the final question for me is that, do you believe in this ceasefire? Because I know that there is no real intention for many soldiers, at least from what I talk to them, to really to fight in the fight. People are not very happy with the war itself, but many people don't know how to end this, that there is a security. What is your idea? Do you think this ceasefire may be reached? Are the people happy with this less fighting on the front line?
You asked me about what I think, how we can end this.
Do you think that the Minsk peace agreement will be applied?
It's okay. We must try. We need to try, because really, it's normal if people before fighting try speak. And if you understand that it's really that another side lie to you, if you understand that it's just paper, yes, but you must try. We tried. Too much people die. Too much people die. I understand that we now very close to big real war. I mean now war, but I mean war with aircrafts, with open war, okay? We try.
Do you feel that you tried and you failed, or do you think you're still trying to make the peace deal work?
I don't think that we failed. Why? I explain for you. First, if you try make some peace, it's not failed. It's all time just try for a good side. You know, we are in a good side now. It's first, and the next one when we have pause, little pause for one day, okay? Because we can save some lives, and next one we can take this pause for our army. We can отремонтировать. Repair some technique. Volunteers can bring some clothes or foods, or we can take some people who live in this territory, yes, with their children, yes, evacuate them. That's why all posts you can use for good things. I think that it's main in this.
And are you going back?
Not today, but my partner go. Now I need a little bit rest. I was a week there without douche.
Without a shower, without anything?
Yes, not douche, it's French. Now tomorrow I hope that I will be with my son one day, and after again walk and work, because before war we have a little bit time for ready.
To prepare.
To be ready, yes. And now I'm here, not there, but I know that when I come to our office, I find many people who was evacuated, беженцы.
The IDPs, internally displaced people?
Yes, people who need help, because every day I am in a war, fire, bombs, and somebody called to me, okay, can you help for my little children? We need pampers. Okay. Boom, boom. Call me later. Because here in Kiev, many jobs too. This is the same. It's a war.
But do you feel that the procurement for the army, is it enough? Something can be done, because there are different ideas that it improved all the equipment for the army, and that the state can provide more.
It's not enough. We need help. We need help because now volunteers help. well, many. We bring ammunition, special ammunition. We are going to Europe, find there some people who sell something old and bring it to Ukraine and all time. But not enough for us because our country was destroyed. Our last president destroyed our country. They take all money, bring out this money. Russia have billions of dollars to
sponsor
this war. We don't have this money. We really need help. Our boys, our soldiers, fight now just because they're brave and they have idea, national idea. They believe that we must save our country. We must save our families.
Are you hopeful? Are you hopeful?
Hopeful.
Hopeful. To have hope.
Yes, I know that we win. It's normal because good guys win in all movies and in all books. It's our national idea too. We're like Luke Skywalker now. We must win.
Oh, good. Well, I hope you're right, and hope you managed to get a bit of rest, at least a bit, here in Kiev. Thank you very much for joining us, Miroslav. Hi, just back from the front. I think that brings us to the end of this show, right, Natalka?
Yeah, definitely. So we thanks a lot. We found somebody who is here, who was at Maidan, who was on the front line, and also we encourage you to watch all our videos already on they are all on the YouTube to read more because it's an online show. So it's much more than this program. We are very grateful that you were watching and reflecting the year after the Maidan. And as my colleagues, we all see you in a week.